Welcome, everyone. This is the January webinar that the Texas PACE Authority puts together, part of our series we call T5, or TPA's Third Thursday at 2 training series. Today, we're going to be focusing on PACE plus REAP. REAP is a long-standing program that's offered through the U.S. Department of Agriculture that has been used in conjunction with PACE on a couple of projects in Texas. This program, as we'll hear shortly, is in a bit of a holding pattern, kind of a gap with some uncertainty around funding kind of in the short term, but it's a long-standing program that's been a great combination with PACE projects, and we have some examples of how that's worked in the past. So today's webinar, everyone is muted and your video is disabled. If you do have a question, please use the Q&A function or the chat, and we'll keep an eye on that through the webinar and make sure that we get questions addressed before we wrap up today. After the webinar today, you'll get a survey. What did you like? What didn't you like? Are there topics we could address in a different way? You'll also get a copy of the slide deck. There are a variety of hyperlinks in it you'll see. Those will be active and embedded, and so you can access those later. If you are an engineer or other professional that needs professional development hours or training credits, we can provide a certificate that you attended this webinar, and that may be helpful to you to document those professional credit hours. And then lastly, this recording will be posted on TPA's website and YouTube channel. So if you have colleagues that weren't able to attend live today, or if you have questions later and you want to go back to it, it'll be provided to you as a resource afterwards. So our speakers today, myself, Dub Taylor. I am the Chief Operating Officer of the Texas PACE Authority. I'm pleased to be joined by two real experts in this area. Dr. Valerie Shoup, who's the president of the Heritage Institute of Sustainability. Valerie is here on the screen. And then Vicki Tettleton. Vicki is the Texas Energy Coordinator for the USDA's Rural Development section. So she's the person that is really kind of the front lines handling review and applications of USDA REAP grants. And we'll be hearing from her shortly in the webinar. So our agenda today, a couple of things. Looking at the registrations, I see some familiar names. I see some that aren't. So we always like to do a little bit of a recap and review of just what is PACE, what are we talking about here, how is it working thus far, and where is it working. Then we're going to go into the REAP program from USDA, finish with some references and resources, and then should have time at the end for Q&A. All right, so let's just jump into this. And why PACE? So PACE was designed to be a solution to this problem, and that is that property owners know that by making investments in more efficient mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, other related technologies, that they can reduce their operating costs and they can save money over the long run. But these investments, these changes, these upgrades tend to have a high price tag, and businesses have other priorities. And so oftentimes these are not addressed until they become a crisis. The equipment fails, and then it's replaced on an emergency basis. Air conditioners tend to go out in July, not in January. And so, if you need to get an air conditioner in or a water heater in, you may not have the choice. You may just have to take what's available. And so over time, that sort of snowballs, and you wind up with buildings that are consuming a whole lot more energy and water than they really need to. The other thing is with new construction, there is always a budgetary challenge. Everything gets planned and mapped out and bid, and then inevitably you run into change orders and issues that wind up costing the project more. And the things that tend to get cut are the things that are behind the walls that you can't see. So that means, if you have HVAC that's hidden away in a mechanical room, okay, the chances are, that's the efficient equipment's going to get cut, and in its place a cheaper version. But the public facing side, the windows, the walls, all of that won't. And so those decisions made at the front end either really help or haunt the building through its life. So shortcutting those decisions on the front end drives up operating costs and expenses unnecessarily. So these are challenges that, are just the reality of construction industry and building and operating facilities. And so a solution to this is, how do we sync up financing with benefits? And that needs to, accrue over a longer period of time. And so PACE, or Property Assessed Clean Energy, as it's the actual spelled out, not just the acronym. This is a tool that the state legislature in Texas passed a bill and put into place more than 10 years ago. There are 35 plus states around the US that have similar enabling PACE legislation. And this is a financing structure that facilitates private financing for private energy and water efficiency projects, but it's done through an assessment mechanism. And so the benefit of that is a local assessment secures the financing, which provides a much longer runway for the lender. Normally on an equipment financing project, they may want a 5-year term or something like that. Well, that doesn't help from a cash flow standpoint, and PACE can help address that. It's state authorized, so local government code, this is the law where you can see the reference. In Texas, it's adopted city by city and county by county. And eligible properties are any commercial property, multifamily, manufacturing, and agricultural, which is what we're here to talk about some today. The only thing that is really not eligible is single-family residential. And so some of the uses for PACE that we see, obviously taking an older building that has less efficient systems and making upgrades that are energy and water efficient, that's really the primary objective. So on-site generation, that's something that we're seeing a lot of. That could be on-site solar. You could put on-site generation of any type. Energy storage in the form of batteries. We're seeing more batteries come down in price and be integrated with on-site generation. So that's an opportunity as well. In new construction and redevelopment, there you are required to meet whatever the local energy codes are. But if you want to go higher and spec higher performance systems that can effectively future-proof the building, then PACE can be used to finance those higher efficiency systems. And then also, if a building has been constructed and already meets these higher performance standards, but has not used PACE, it's possible to use PACE to refinance or recapitalize some of the financing for projects that otherwise would be eligible. And I mentioned Valerie has joined us today. Valerie is an engineer that has worked on a number of PACE projects in different roles, both as a design engineer, doing analysis and energy assessments on the front end, but then also doing independent third-party reviews on the back end. So Valerie, is there anything you'd like to add as far as uses you've seen and where PACE has come into play in the field?
Yes. So the thing to really keep in mind when you do a project, there is so much more than just the PACE financing. So when you're working on a project, if you just use standard engineering practices and don't employ like an energy engineer, they're going to build everything to code. But it's amazing when you dig in and really look at what you're doing and you're trying to figure out, okay, how can I get the most bang for my buck? You want to go with the most efficient equipment on the market, albeit it may be a little more expensive. But if you look at the payback over the life of the project, it ends up being, much, much better for the owner in the operating costs in the long run. For instance, if you have the engineer and designer might put in a SEER 14 air handling unit, a 5-ton split system. If you go with a SEER 21, you can get 33% more energy savings over the life of the project. So what's nice about PACE, once you get into these systems, into a PACE project, you also find other ways to save and make money. There are water rebates in many parts of the state. There's the energy rebates from your taxes, like for instance, the IRS 179D, so you can actually get more money with tax credits. And what's interesting, on one of my latest jobs, we found out about the opportunity to sell solar tax credits. So you get solar in, and not only do you have tax credits, but not everybody has an appetite for those tax credits. In other words, maybe their actual tax is low. Well, you can actually sell those tax credits to help pay for the solar system. So just getting into a project is really a good start. And then oftentimes when you get into these projects, you find other things, you might find safety things that need to be taken care of. So there's a lot of benefits of just getting started. I mean, sometimes you say, oh, you don't want to get started, but once you get started on these projects, you can find all additional sources of income other than just your loan and your energy savings. And that's what I've had so much fun over the years is I've found more and more sources to help pay for these projects where your out-of-pocket costs end up being really low and that your payback and the benefits to the property owner are really increased. So anyway, Deb will probably talk more about that as we continue on.
Great. Appreciate that. Thanks, Valerie. So again, the key to PACE, and we like to sort of, say it this way in a nutshell, is it allows you to pay for today's upgrades using tomorrow's savings. So it helps sync those things up. You know that you're going to see the operating cost benefits from these improvements, but how do you monetize those benefits and allow those to contribute to the financing side to implement the project? If you compare again, sort of a conventional financing scenario, this would be like an equipment financing. You may have a 5-year term, and so your debt service is going to be much higher than the benefits from the project, than the utility or operating savings. And so this is pretty unappealing for an owner to say, wait a minute, I'm going to be upside down financially if I make all of this investment, and I'm not going to see the savings, immediately. They accrue over a longer period of time. With PACE, by having the assessment really secure that longer term financing, now you actually realize those benefits day one and through the term of the loan. So you're cash flow positive. You see the increase in net operating expense, and this is a much more appealing sort of financing proposition for owners. All right, so that's kind of the super high level snapshot of PACE. And so how is this all working? This is beyond concept. We've had a good track record here in Texas. I mentioned that the structure here in Texas is that this is a local opt-in program. So a city or a county takes a couple of deliberate actions to create a PACE program or a PACE region around its either city boundaries or county boundaries. So as of this year and in this month, there are over 100 cities and counties, you see them here on the map, that have created PACE programs. So if it's a shaded county, that means it's been adopted at the county level. If you see a star, that means it's been adopted at the city level. And if you see the little light bulb logos there, that is where projects are. So this has been, again, active in Texas for over a decade now. All of these details, including the locations of the projects and the cities and so forth, are all on our website there. So our role, we are a Texas PACE Authority, is a nonprofit that was created specifically to administer PACE programs for cities and counties that have decided to set them up. Understandably, a city or county does not want to create a PACE department to run the program. If the application and deal flow is uncertain, they don't want to create that administrative burden or expense. So we do that for them, and we really operate as a partner, implementing the program in this governmental function above the line here in this illustration. We work with capital providers, property owners, and different service providers to really put the projects together and then propose them to the PACE program for acceptance and review. And again, Valerie, you've been as a service provider very active in Texas. You've really sat in both seats, both as a working with a property owner on the design side, but then also there is a requirement in Texas that a third-party Texas licensed professional engineer, that's someone not otherwise involved in the project, does a review of the technical aspects of the project to determine if they're valid and that the savings that are projected should accrue for the owner. So would you want to elaborate sort of on those two roles as a ITPR or as a design engineer?
Okay, yes, I'd love to elaborate. Well, I really my personal preference is to be on the front end of a project because um, that you can come up with a lot of very interesting ways of improving the cash flow on a project because energy engineers really make it their business to know what the best technology out there is and how to save the maximum amount on a project. So it's really fun on the front end. I love the creative aspect of that. Now, in regard to being an ITPR on the back end, um, what I also like about that is oftentimes the engineers on the front end haven't thought of all the energy efficiency things they can do. And it also gives you the opportunity while you can examine the work that the engineer did and come up with it, determine whether the savings they suggested will actually happen. But what's even more exciting than that is also suggesting, hey, I saw this, and if we do this, not that, we can save a little more money here or save a little more money there. So just I think whether you're an energy engineer on the front end or on the back end of the project, there's a lot of opportunity to really help the end user. And what I really like and always have liked about the PACE program is that anybody can come into your business and tell you, hey, we can save you this amount of money. But when you go through the Texas PACE Authority, you have people actually, looking at the numbers and helping, you make the project pan out because, sometimes people can be a little over aggressive on what they say if I switch out this lighting, it's going to save this money. And so the math says, yeah, you save this many watts and you calculate it out. But then when you really think about, okay, we have a whole building here, these fixtures are older. So older fixtures, they tend to not draw as much current as a brand new, fixture. And so, it gives you a chance for someone to really reality check. You're getting a reality check that you don't get in a normal project. Because I can remember one time a church asked me to reality check what somebody had told them, and they said that just on controls of HVAC, they were going to save 50% of the energy consumption of the building. And I said to them, well, the HVAC isn't even 50% of your building electric bill to start with, so there's no way that you can save 50% by adding these controls. So I'm sorry I'm being long-winded, but what I wanted to say is what I love about the Texas PACE Authority is you do have third-party people looking at the project and kind of reality checking. And it's always good, whether you're a design engineer or, no matter who you are, it's always good to have that second set of eyes, that can ask questions and say, maybe this number doesn't look quite right, So that's what I really like about PACE is you can feel confident when you're doing a PACE project that multiple people have looked at the job and that, yes, you are going to save that money. And in fact, I had one time where the Texas PACE Authority had reached out to me about a project and asked me about the cost of the project. It was a solar project. And they said, well, this is how much they want to charge for the solar panels. Does this number look right? So that's the other thing nice about PACE. They're also looking at the cost. Does the cost seem reasonable for what the work that is getting done? Do these costs seem too high or are they on the mark? So, doing a PACE project has lots and lots of benefits.
Great, thanks. Yeah, emphasizing really kind of the built-in quality control elements of PACE. So for sure. So as far as how things have worked, the PACE project diversity, we've had over 87 projects closed in the state, uh, totaling over $500 million. And these have been in urban areas, they've been in rural areas, office, mixed use, nonprofit, hospitality, manufacturing, you name it. The projects have involved energy efficiency upgrades, water conservation, distributed generation, primarily solar, other demand reduction projects, and they've been as small as 68,000 and as large as 48 million. So quite a range there. Couple that I wanted to highlight here where there was one of the questions I saw pop up about could PACE and REAP be combined? The answer is yes, and we have some examples of that. This is a retail business, Central Texas, a general store. Pretty new building. They really, didn't need much as far as lighting, HVAC. All that was pretty new, but they did want to install solar, and so they were able to access a incentive, a grant from REAP through the REAP program at USDA for $31,000. Then also at the time, the electric utility serving the area, Encore, had a very generous incentive program for solar, so they're able to secure another 38,000 through the utility. Then they financed the balance, which was $120,000. The utility savings on the electric side, 26% for this facility, and a good portion of it covered through incentives and grants. So PACE, again, even though it's this sort of government-enabled mechanism, uses private capital, meaning that there's not a restriction for matching that with federal dollars, utility dollars, or any other incentives that are out there. And we encourage that. As Valerie said, she mentioned 179D on the tax credit side and other funding sources. All of those can be combined and brought to a project in conjunction with PACE. Another example, and this is a slightly different type of project. So new construction of a hospital in Northeast Texas. Here, they specified equipment that was above code. So again, lighting, HVAC, plumbing, building envelope, roof, all of this, higher levels of insulation, higher efficiency equipment, low flow fixtures for plumbing. And so by going above code, that made the project eligible for PACE. They were also able to secure this fell in an area that qualified for a USDA loan guarantee. The total PACE assessment in this case, $5.5 million, about a quarter of the project's cost, and considerable electric, gas, and water savings, again, by going above code and essentially future-proofing this facility against what we know will be, higher utility costs going forward. So I'm going to turn it over to Vicki now, who's with USDA, and I'll preface this by saying, as I said at the outset, REAP is a long-standing program enabled by the federal government and run by USDA for a number of years. It is funded on a recurring basis through the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill, in contrast to some other legislation, has widespread popular support. Generally, it always passes. It has funding built into it, unlike a lot of federal legislation where there's an authorization, then separately an appropriation. So it's been a very reliable, consistent program over its history. Like a lot of the federal programs, the recent IRA added significant dollars. Those were kind of a temporary boost. And so there's been a whole lot of attention and activity around REAP because of that. So there's kind of a bump up on the funding and activity level. We're about to hit a period here that Vicki will cover a bit where we're going to have a bit of a gap. But then things, at least on the Farm Bill funding side, should move back sort of on a kind of a regular schedule. And then the IRA dollars we should get some clarity on that going forward as well. So Vicki, let me turn it over to you. Vicki is joining us by phone, not on screen, but I'll let you go ahead and speak to your slides here and just give me a cue when you need me to advance it.
One of the things I'd like you to do is go back to your slide for Elgin I want to
Okay.
touch on a couple of things that are not, these things are really not in my slides.
Okay.
You'll notice that this project had a 26% electric savings, and we're very competitive. And I worked on this project. They scored exceptionally well, and they saved 26% and only got a 24%. This is farm bill money that funded this. So it was a 25% grant on their total project cost. So before we even get into the other information, I want to point out that it was an excellent project and was a success. Now, if you'll go back to Clarksville, I want to say something about that too. I worked on this project also, and one of the biggest things that we see that we like that has to do with PACE, besides the fact they're easy to work with, they're wonderful when it comes, if it's a project that has to have an energy assessment or energy audit, they can help with that. If the project is funded by both PACE and REAP, we can use the same energy audit. So it's a tremendous cost savings. And you notice there's a 26% savings on water. We can't touch water savings. We have nothing that we can do with water. So when a project comes in and it's a facility that wants to do energy efficiency, if it's something that uses a lot of water, such as a hospital, a restaurant, or anything else, we encourage them to please contact PACE, because there are savings that you could reach out and have that we can't do anything with. So I just wanted to make a point about those two slides, that I don't have anything about it in my slides, but I think it's very important.
Great. Thanks, Vicki.
Uh-huh.
All right, let's move on to
Okay.
this one. Yeah.
Okay. Kind of what Dub was touching on, and it's the agency has paused the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, we call it IRA. It funded 50% of your total eligible project cost. And because we had such a tremendous amount of activity with that, we're just overwhelmed. And they put a pause on it starting December 31st, whenever the deadline closed, and it is not going to open again until proposed to open July the 1st. So the Farm Bill funding was never left. It's always been there. We've had it for years and years, and it's 25% of your total eligible project cost. We're going to be accepting those right now and through March 31st, and then there's a pause on those until July the 1st. And the way that we're approaching it and looking at it is that come July the 1st, we're going to move right on and go right back where we have been for the last 2 years. There's a link at the bottom, and you can go to that link, and it will tell you it's got any kind of updates, like the pause. That pause is on that. If you go to the To Apply, you can go to the To Apply tab, and every form that you would need is there, and it has information for contacting me or any other things that you'd need to do for an application. Okay, REAP guaranteed loans are, they compete always. There are no quarterly deadlines. There's no specific timeframes for them. The rates and terms are negotiated between the applicant and the lender. REAP loans that are guaranteed loans, the borrower is required to have 25% of the total eligible project cost for their injection into the project. REAP has loan and grant combos that are submitted by the lender. The lender submits both applications at the same time. The thing with that, if you go that direction, every REAP application is a scored application, and they compete based on score. So the loan and grant combo together compete on the grant score. And there are some things that we can tell you will help your score whenever you think you're going to apply. So I encourage you to always call and talk to your REAP coordinator and find out what they might be able to do. If for some reason REAP funds are not available, or It's a project that is partial REAP, but not 100% REAP. You can always apply for a 1RD BNI guaranteed loan. It's the same. Its rates and terms are negotiated between the applicant and the lender. Who can apply for a REAP loan or grant? It's really pretty simple. Rural small businesses and agriculture producers. Rural small businesses have to be for profit. You can be a cooperative, electric utility, or tribe. And you must be located in a community of 50,000 or less. The
Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
There we go.
Ag producers are supposed to get 50% or more of their gross income from ag operations. And if you aren't sure if you qualify or you have questions and you think you might be, then please reach out and we can go over it, because an ag producer can be anywhere. Rural small businesses they're restricted by the location, and they're restricted by meeting the Small Business Administration income limits. Ag producers can make any amount of money and they can be anywhere. Okay, next slide. This is a link to take you to check your eligibility. And I've actually snipped and put a picture in here. I gave instructions of how to do it, but you can see very clearly the address that I put in where the little red pin is in that light shaded area. It's eligible. The tan area is not eligible. And for those of you who are in the DFW area, you can see where Everman, Bisbee, Rendon are. So there are areas, a lot of our vendors who are extremely successful with solar use the eligibility map as a tool. If they're located in the DFW area or they're around San Antonio or Austin, they'll use that map and zoom in, and you can zoom in and you could be ineligible on one side of the street and eligible on the other. So if anybody is interested and they have questions about that, again, reach out and we can go step by step and go over it.
And again, these slides will be provided later with these active links, so you'll be able to just click on that and take you right to this resource.
Yeah. So projects are renewable energy systems, energy efficiency improvements, or energy efficiency equipment and systems, EEE, EEI, and RES. The EEE is a loan guarantee only, and you have to be an ag producer. So next slide. Solar, people ask me all the time, what do we do the most? Well, we do the most solar. But it could be any type of renewable project. We have done wind. I've not done any hydro. We do anaerobic digesters. We've done a biomass, geothermal, wave and ocean power. We've not had any, but they are absolutely eligible. Next slide. Energy efficiency projects. It's kind of like what Valerie was talking about. There's so many things that you can do. The only thing we can't do is water, but lighting, heating, cooling, ventilation fans, your controls, insulation. And there are many, many times whenever somebody will come in and an applicant will say, well, there's a guy selling lights. He came by and told me I can do it. Well, we require, if you're doing an energy efficiency project, you must have an energy assessment or an energy audit. And it has to be independent third party. So that means that we're not taking, and you're not going to be stuck with something that a salesman told you. You've got the opinion of someone who's they know what they're doing, like Valerie. Next slide. The energy efficient equipment and systems, we have not had one of these applications since they created this. It is very restrictive. It's very specific. You have to be an ag producer. It's a guaranteed loan. And there's real stringent restrictions on the equipment that you put in. So if you're interested, let me know. Next slide. This screen is multi-purpose. We have issues that come up continually with applications, and these hot points on here are my way of trying to maybe curb a problem. Energy efficiency improvements have to submit the energy audit or assessment with the application. That cost is not a reimbursable cost. So that's why I made the point that if you are doing something in conjunction with PACE and you are already getting an energy audit, that means that if you do the energy audit, we can accept it, and it's not a situation where you're having to pay two people to do the same thing. Renewable energy, at times, we require a feasibility study. If you're going to put in an anaerobic digester, you're going to have to submit a feasibility study. There is a requirement of any project that's 200,000 and over must submit one, and the only thing that we don't force it on is a solar system because they're pretty cut and dried. Eligible project costs are only costs incurred after complete application has been received by the agency. And I tell everybody, ask me, and I will send you something in writing to make sure that you know when you can start spending your money. All applications require an environmental review. If you're putting solar or you're doing energy efficiency, it's a simple cut and dried. Unless your building's 50 years or over, you've got a historical marker on the front of the building, or you're within a historical district, national historic or state. Ground mounts that are 10 acres or less are a little more complicated, but not horrible. If you're over 10 acres, then it's an energy assessment, and you really need to reach out and talk to somebody about the project. Any renewable energy system that has battery backup is currently being sent to National Office for Technical Merit Review. We've had instances where pretty small solar arrays are being installed with massive batteries. And the idea for REAP is that the batteries are only powered by the solar array. You're not supposed to hook them in. We don't do battery energy storage systems. BESS systems are not REAP eligible. And REAP is a reimbursable grant. If you're approved and you get the documents and we tell you you're approved, then you must pay for everything upfront and you request reimbursement. Renewable energy systems have to be producing for 30 days as proposed in the application prior to being reimbursed, which is a good thing, because that means that if your system is not producing the way that vendor said it's going to, we're going to go back and say, no, we can't pay you, and you can reach out and deal with that vendor and make whatever corrections they need to make. Next screen. This is eligible project costs, and it's pretty broad. The thing that I would like to point out that's on the right-hand side is I am overwhelmed with people that want to have solar tractors, solar drones, all sorts of things that run off solar. And we don't do any type of vehicle. If it moves, if it propels itself in any way, we don't do it. It doesn't matter if it's got solar panels strapped on it or not. So next screen. And this is just the contacts. You can contact me. You can click on the links. You can go. It's the same link that is earlier in the PowerPoint. It'll tell you how to get around and what you need to do on the REAP program website. And applications are mailed to the state energy coordinators if you want to apply. I think that's it. Oh, no, I take it back. This is a map that shows you where money's been spent. It's takes a while for it to load, I'll tell you the truth. But then you can move around and see exactly where USDA has invested their energy, their funds. And that's me. Marita is my absolute right hand. Edgar helps with all the outreach and part of the things that we do at the agency. And then there's the agency link. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Yep. And we're going to, some questions have popped up during the presentation. We'll get to those in just a second. At the end, we'll have time. But thank you, Vicki. Appreciate you joining us today and providing some clarity. There's a lot of interest in REAP, I know, and combining it with PACE. Okay, so jumping on to kind of resources and kind of bring us to a close here. So I mentioned earlier that we've seen about $500 million in PACE projects across the state that have closed. The Department of Energy, this is an interesting tool they have that assesses what the PACE opportunity is. And for projects that really meet the technical qualifications, their tool shows that there are over $15 billion of eligible projects across the state that would yield savings to owners of over $23 billion. So at $500 million, we're really pleased with that progress, but we barely scratched the surface. And these numbers, because of data limitations, don't include certain categories like healthcare, industrial, or ag. So that would be in addition. So there's a huge opportunity out there. And again, combining other resources like REAP with PACE is just really a perfect way to do it. So our website is here. Everything that I've shared with you and more is there. How PACE works, kind of the program guide, as well as our technical standards. The projects that I showed earlier are just a couple. We have many that are profiled in case studies. So you can see, how this is applied for different types of projects. Service providers, if you're looking for an engineer, a lender, other helpful service providers, those are provided there as a resource. And then we continue to provide training and support like in the form of webinars like this and other different activities. So those are all linked there as well. This webinar is obviously today on the 16th. A couple of other things coming up in January, including at the end of the month. I believe that's in Houston, GBC, US Building, Green Building, Building Transformation Leadership Series. So we also we have events here that we sponsor and coordinate, but then also other events of interest we list there as well. So our emails are here. If you have questions afterwards, please don't hesitate to contact us. If you have registered for the website or for the webinar today and you're here in attendance, you'll receive a copy of the slides. You'll also get a link to where this webinar is being recorded on the YouTube channel that Texas PACE Authority hosts, and also a survey. So I saw a couple of questions pop up earlier around that. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And I know we had some questions, so let's go ahead and see what we've got.
Hey, Dub, I'd like to just make a quick comment. If anybody watching today is with a city and you would like to have a presentation done for your businesses in the city, we do go on the road a lot to different cities, and they invite all their businesses, so the businesses are aware of PACE. So our goal is to really get to every single city in the state and let them know about PACE, because they're missing an opportunity.
Great. Yeah, exactly. Thanks. It is a big state, and we cover it corner to corner. And so we're happy to come out and meet with whomever to help them better understand the program and how they can apply it to projects and opportunities they have in their communities. So questions, let's see, will we share the presentation? Yes, you'll get a copy, you'll get links afterwards. Can a business receive both PACE and REAP incentives? Yes. In fact, as Vicki highlighted, in the case of the energy assessment that's required for both, the energy assessment could be done for PACE, and that could be used for the REAP incentive as well. PACE is only applied to commercial projects, not residential, correct? In Texas, PACE is just for commercial, in any non-residential project. So if it is 5 residential units or more, then it technically qualifies as a commercial building. So that could be eligible. So not a 4-plex, but a 5-plex residential and greater, and then any commercial building, industrial, manufacturing, agriculture. Payback period for the Elgin facility with their utility savings. That's a good question. I don't have that top of mind, but I think typically the payback for solar in Texas these days with utility rates and costs is probably in the 10 to 15 year range. Does that sound right to you, Valerie?
Well, if they got REAP funding, I imagine that
Faster than that.
it could be a lot faster.
Yeah.
So,
I
and
think
it
without
also,
incentives, without incentives, just a straight payback would probably be 10 to 15 in most cases. And then if you're buying down the cost of the project with incentives, it just speeds
Yeah.
up that payback.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you can get 7 years easy when you utilize all of your incentives.
Yeah. Let's see. Request for the slides. Yes, we'll send those out. Okay, Vicki, I think this one is probably one you can answer. Let's see. Applications on July 1st onward may be eligible for 50%, or we don't know. I think the answer to that is we don't know, right?
We don't know, but we're proceeding as if yes, they are.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. This is another one for Vicki. Would our company be considered agriculture if we are a water farm? We plan to build water, so water, essentially water harvesting and production. So produced water from atmospheric water generation. So that's an interesting.
Well, I'm not sure that it would. I'd have to know more about the project,
Yeah.
but I will say I have ag producers all the time who are ag producer, but they don't meet the 50% or more from sales of what they actually produce, what they grow. So, if you think that you want to try to do that, please contact me.
Okay. So possibly, okay.
Yeah.
It says the buildings will be LEED certified type sustainable construction. So I think the buildings themselves would be, the question would be if the water harvesting production equipment would be, and that's a maybe. You'd have to look into it.
Yeah, because it's got to be something you produce.
Yeah.
And truly, you don't produce that water, truly, if you're harvesting.
Let's see.
But it doesn't mean that it couldn't qualify as a small business.
Yeah.
But they might want to just contact me off of this.
Okay. Let's see. Link for higher tax credit for low income areas. I don't think we talked about that.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that, but low income areas, you do get higher tax credits. So, I mean, that's what's nice if you're rural in a lot of those low income areas, it will increase like your tax credit on your solar by 10%. So there are several additional tax credits if you're in a rural area.
So kind of a bonus structure in addition to just the base tax credit. Okay. Hondo, Texas says, please come see us. We will be happy to do that. Love to go to Hondo. Let's see, are there specific environmental permitting requirements for projects to qualify? Vicki, I think you talked about this as far as the environmental review. That's not, maybe describe that a little bit more. I don't think we're not talking about like a full blown sort of NEPA environmental assessment. There's a different type of environmental review for REAP. Is that right?
No,
No?
not really.
Okay.
No, sadly, that's why I added it in that slide.
Okay.
If it's just a roof mount and it's not on a building 50 years or older, then it's a very simple categorical exclusion without
Gotcha.
report.
Okay.
And if it is a ground mount and it's 10 acres or less, it's a categorical exclusion with a report. And NEPA does apply. They have to contact SHPO and they've got to contact tribes.
Mhm.
They have to do all sorts of stuff with fish and wildlife. And then an EA is a full blown, it's considerably more. But whomever asks a question, if you'll send me an email, I'll be glad to forward you what you would need.
Okay. Yeah, so depending on the nature of the project and I know if you're disturbing ground and other things, that triggers a higher level of review as compared, as you said, kind of rooftop solar, which has pretty minimal impact.
Exactly. And even a wind turbine is a Cat X with a report.
Okay.
Because it just because of the nature of the wind turbine. So,
okay.
But yeah, they could reach out. I'll be happy to give them more information.
Okay. Here's a question on the energy audit. What level of energy model is required, if any? That sounds like a good question for you, Valerie.
So I've done an ASHRAE level 2 on
Mhm.
all the projects I've done so far, REAP and PACE.
Okay. I think that is pretty consistent with what we see coming through the files. So yeah, two seems detailed enough without being onerous to support the technical aspects of the projects.
Can I say something about that,
Of
about the
course.
energy efficiency? For us, and Valerie knows this because we had discussed this before, we can do it if it's an existing building and that building owner has 12 months of utility bills. If you want to go, or you have acquired a historical building or any number of other things that have been sitting vacant for 12 months or whatever, even though common sense tells you you can do many things that would create savings, we can't touch it. REAP can't touch it. I don't know about PACE, but we cannot. So
Just seeing, so one of the attendees sounds like they're in the solar business, and they said based on their pricing, the payback is better than what we've said. So that's encouraging. I know that solar modules themselves are almost commoditized. So a lot of times what drives the price is the complexity of the installation and kind of the balance of system and permitting and interconnection and things like that. And if that can all be streamlined, then definitely the install cost of solar can be compressed, and it's plateaued a bit, but certainly it's much less than it was even 3, 4, 5 years ago. Let's see. Question. So website to identify low-income areas eligible for the higher tax credit. I cannot point you to that website. I know that one exists though, and it may be through either Treasury, through the IRS, or through Department of Energy. But there is a map similar to the map that USDA has for REAP that helps identify which of those areas. All right, that's all the questions I see. Thanks for those. 17 questions from the attendees. So good engagement. We hope this has been helpful to you. Again, we'll wrap up now, but look for a follow-up email with a link to the slides as well as the recorded presentation. And please share with your colleagues and others that may not have been able to attend live this afternoon, but would have interest in this. And look for future webinars and training events that we will host and let you know about. You can subscribe on our website to get those updates as well as newsletters. And with that, we will wrap up today and hope you have a good rest of your afternoon and on to the weekend. And we will see you next time.